as I mentioned before, if everyone wants to use the comments and the reactions, that would be great, just to help us kind of interact, so we're not talking to our walls, I guess, as well. But we, just to introduce myself, so I'm Dan from IGHR, and this is joined by Jenny, and this is our one of many first webinars that we've done, and we wanted to do this one on the first 90 days, which was about setting your new starters up for success in light of employment law changes that have come into play, or coming into play, that will be effective from July, but we'll be speaking about that as we go on. Can you have the next slide, please? Yeah. Cool. Okay, so Team IG is Jenny and I. So you can see us popping up on the screen on our little professional photo shoot there. Both HR consultants. So those who don't know who Jen and I are, we work in the HR space. We have 4 combined, I'm going to say 25, if I'm going to count that right now, combined experience of years together. With the length and breadth of working with all sorts of clients. We have some clients on the call as well. So hello to see you there, and also some new faces and names as well. Alongside that, Jen is also an ICF accredited coach, and we offer coaching and training alongside our HR consultancy and projects too. Anything you want to say?
Sure. Thank you, and yeah, thanks everyone for joining us this morning. We will make sure to send out the recordings to everybody afterwards as well. But yeah, it's good to see some friendly faces, and I appreciate you joining us.
Brilliant. Okay, so what to expect from today? So we're going to go what is exactly changing when it comes to those unfair dismissal legislation changes in the UK. If anyone's outside the UK as well, welcome. We have some new guests, so I'll pop them in as we are going through. And yeah, so it's all UK related that we will be talking about here. Can you understand how that legislation is going to impact you and as well your probationary periods? As the title of this webinar is the first 90 days, we're going to be focusing on what you can do in order to set your new starter up for success, as the title suggests, but also encompass those new changes that are coming in and what we can do to kind of help and assist you along that way, give you some tips and tricks. So really, it's good to help you start thinking about how you will review that pre-onboarding of somebody, that onboarding of an individual, and then going through that probationary process. So if we think of the employee life cycle, we're at kind of the first quarter that we'll be focusing on when it comes to what we're discussing today. So that we're making sure that everything fits for your business, your managers, your new hires, and ultimately helping you minimize that risk. Everything in the world when it comes to HR, everything is about risk and those slight risks that you're taking. Obviously, any decision that you make will be some element of risk if that is just a low risk decision that's being made. So for example, you're moving premises, quite a low risk, but still a risk nonetheless. You might lose people along the way, or that high risk if you're going through that redundancy project or process. So there's a lot of risk when it comes to everything HR, but it's just to help you mitigate and manage that risk as best as possible. Next one, please, Jen. Okay, so the purpose of probationary period. So if you can pop in the chat on the side, how many, or you can use the reaction, how many of you actually follow a probation period at the moment? I want to see everybody making sure that the comments are good. There we go. There we go. Thanks for raising hands as well. Brilliant. Okay, so that's a good sign. We're on a good start. But how many of you actually think that your probationary period is fit for purpose at the moment? Okay, different story. Good one, Joe. And we can go in obviously more into it today. But really, the probation period is just that structured trial phase at the start of your employment. And it's just to help you decide if it is right for you having this individual, and it's also for them as well. We have in contracts of employment that somebody, if they're not happy with their employment, they can put their notice in. That will be 1 week, which is different from the majority, which may be 1 month after your probation. So it's just giving that flexibility on both sides, and that is for the employee as well as the employer. And its primary purpose, obviously, is just to set those expectations for both of you, so that you mutually evaluate whether the role's right for you. So you might think, oh, wow, this person is absolutely amazing. I want to keep them forever. But it may be that they're not happy, and it might be because of, is it the company culture? Is it maybe the role wasn't right for them? Maybe they jumped the gun, and it was potential going into a management position for them, or a senior position that they weren't quite ready for, and they want to come out of that. And that's an effective way and use of using that probationary period. So that fit used on both sides. Next, please, Jen. Okay, so talk about the legal part of everything here. So essentially, the safety net that everybody kind of refers to with employment rights is that 2-year rule that exists. And that effectively is going. So that is getting reduced from 2 years down to 6 months. So that's protection against ordinary unfair dismissal, and which is reducing. It's coming in on January the 1st of 2027, which feels like it's forever away, but we blinked and I'm fast tracked 6 months into the year. I was talking and it felt like Christmas yesterday, and then it's going to be Christmas again tomorrow. I know I didn't mean to use the C word whilst in the webinar today, but there we go. And effectively, life just happens really quickly, and these changes are going to impact and come in before we even kind of blink. So it's going to apply and affect those that are in coming into the business from July of this year. So is anybody hiring or hiring at the moment that may have a new starter coming in July? And anybody on the call? Yeah. So it's going to impact you in terms of having those conversations and making sure that there is a plan and a structure in place. So in terms of advantages of what this kind of means for businesses, because it is a good thing as well as it can be a negative thing, depending on what lens you look at this through. And on that, it's that fairness for that employees. They don't have to wait around and feel like, oh, there's this looming trial period that I've got to wait for at least 2 years because they can just get rid of me at a drop of a hat, which not many people may think about. But if that's happened to somebody before, they're going to go into a new role, which is probably your company, and they'll be thinking that in the back of their mind, and that's that scareness, that scarcity that may come from them there. So there's that element of fairness, and also now it's impacting employers in order to review the onboarding approach that you may have. So that has that long-lasting effects on the likes of engaging your current and new employees, and as well in the long run, that retention, so ensuring that employees are keeping within your company. Disadvantages though, so there is obviously two ends to the coin on it here. So the disadvantages could be that there's bigger risks to organizations of not getting it right by coming to webinars and speaking to HR practitioners like this. I know there's some HR folks on the call as well, but just by being in the know is one step ahead than others that aren't at the moment. So it can be big risks for employees. I know I'm using the risk word again, but getting things wrong can lead to greater risk, and that's where we talk about the legal bit. As well, anxiety for employees could come from this, and that might be because there is less time that they have to show and present themselves to be like, okay, no, I am right for this company. They feel like it's right, but then you as the employer might not feel that they're a good fit because that parameter, that time has reduced significantly for them. Another disadvantage finally could be that employees may put on a show. I know this is very kind of like stereotypical, or it may not even happen, or it's that one case in 1,000 where people are putting on that great show whilst they're in the probationary period, and then bam, as soon as day one they're out of the probation period, they become a different individual. So it's about having that, oh no, they're going to put on a really good show, and then they're the perfect recruit at this moment in time. They're amazing. And then, oh no, now we've got all these performance management issues. Like I said, 1 in 1,000, but it does happen more than others. So it is worth noting here. And it's not just about the process. I think there's a nervousness around the whole process of being unable to dismiss people after 6 months, which is completely untrue. Basically, what it will be now is anybody that has, well, after this date, anybody that has 6 months or more, you just have to follow that fair, consistent process, which Jen will talk about in a moment, about documentation, and making sure as well we're not being discriminatory in any way, shape or form in that process. So maybe it is more of a good sign because there is paperwork, there's documentation to say this person wasn't a fit, so that's why we've departed them from the company, for whatever exit means that is. Next one, Jen.
I'm trying.
You're trying.
There we go.
Okay, so what essentially? Typically, any dismissals that take place 6 months service require that fair process to have taken place. So exactly what I said a moment ago, we need to make sure that we are following that fair and consistent process. We're reviewing the current probationary process that you have at the moment. It might just be that you do a short probation. You might do a 3-month probation as it is already. Okay, that's great. That might not be great in some other aspects. It's fit for purpose for you and your business and the decision that's being made by you. But by reviewing that current probation process, is there a first week check-in meeting, a first month? Is there a mid-probation meeting? And is this all documented, or is it just a casual conversation that we're expecting our employers, our managers to have? And then the next point there in terms of documenting it, making sure that it's written down. We use with our clients a system called Breathe HR that has the kind of like the functionality in order to document one-to-ones, performance conversations, and it may not always be utilized as much, but there is a drive and a push now in order to do that. So it doesn't have to be hand notes or Word document and then uploaded into a system or on a file note somewhere. You can use your HR system directly just to document these things, like things are going well, maybe more some training needed on here. And it's just those pointers that just exist so that you can always refer back to from the 30-day to the 60-day, then to the eventual the 90-day, and say, look how far you've come, which is always quite nice. And also as well, ensuring that onboarding sets up those new hires for success in that way, because we don't want anybody to fail. We're bringing somebody into our business because we want to help them out. I think Jen and I are fortunate in that position to be able to openly speak about it. We've got somebody starting as well on the 1st of July. So now we need to walk the walk and talk the talk, practice what we preach in terms of having somebody with us that as HR people, we're going to walk the walk and talk the talk now. But we're ensuring that we're setting this person up for success when she comes into that business there. Also, there's that element of training and guiding your managers through. It might just be a quick conversation, or someone goes, I know what I'm doing, thrown in the deep end, and they go completely rogue. So you may want to establish a document that just says this is how we run, and it's a document that's going to the managers. It might be that you do all the probation periods in your company because it's slightly smaller, or you as the HR person that's on the call listening in today is also sitting in on those meetings, and it might be just that you are guiding that manager along or actually following that process. But just having that one pager to say this is what a probation is and this is the areas that you need to cover helps that we're not following a document because we have to. Then you've got that human side that you're actually having a conversation with a person with just a bit of prompts and a bit of an agenda. So if a new hire isn't working out, what's the risk to your business if the onboarding or probation period is weak under these new rules? Does anybody have any particular risks or ideas of what this may look like for them? Anybody in comments? No worries if not. But if the new hire is working out, a general rule of thumb could be after month 4, you might be in that position to understand if somebody is right for your company, and you may just kind of feel that within your bones. Yes, this person's a right fit. We just need to make sure that we're documenting it, and that might be all that it may need to be. So if you're running a 6-month probation and it starts on or after that 1st of July period, as we mentioned before, it begins from the 1st of January 2027. And if someone isn't right for you by that time, the law's not going to be on your side from January onwards. So you need to make sure that you have all of this in place. And that's why we're saying, so what? So what is that factor of making sure we're setting up for success? Many employers fall back on, well, we'll just do the 2-year rule. That 2-year rule, as I've mentioned already, will be leaving. So it won't be on your side. And your gut knows if somebody is right for you. So how long should a probation period be? Before I go on from this, I don't know if anyone wants to drop in the comments, how long is your probation period at the moment? Loads of companies do everything differently. If you can just pop a number in. 6 months, yeah, 6. 6, yeah, 3, okay. Brilliant. Okay, so mixture of 6 and 3, which when I was last in corporate, the 3-month seemed to be like the cool and hip thing to do, and that a lot of companies did follow that, and it was good because it was kind of like similar to what I said. By month 4, you will know in your gut if that person's right for you. By month 3, is that person right for you? Yes or no? But then we can extend it, as Joe's mentioned there, with the view to extending it. There's many different ways that you can look at this, because ultimately it is a business decision that comes down to it. It is the bottom line here is you are your own company. You can decide when your probation periods are. I've worked before where there's been 23-month probation periods, which is ridiculous. Obviously, it's just before that 2-year rule comes in, but it just kept people on edge. People didn't really tend to stay within the business, so that retention element wasn't really always there. But we've kind of gone back and forth in terms of having that recommendation, but it's looking like 3 to 4 months based on what other people are saying at the moment from employment lawyers, solicitors. I'm not even going to say the government because they haven't, but recommending that 3 to 4 months, because then you have that view to potentially extend up to by 6 weeks. We have had conversations with some of our clients that we've looked at and went, yes, no, that might be right for us as well, where we've said 5 months in terms of having that probation period for 5 months with the view to extend just under 1 month, because then that still falls nicely under that category of it's under that 6 months, so we can still dismiss under the probation without that unfair dismissal lingering over us. But 3 to 4 months seems to be quite fitting with what other people are going with. Like I said, we're not following the crowd in that respect. The bottom line is it is your decision as a business. This extension that we're saying for potentially 6 weeks allows just that extra bit of buffer time, but just to be mindful that things are still being documented where and when they should be. And it should never be a shock to an employee that they're going to fail their probation or be extended. Sometimes people may be shocked that they've passed it. I've come across that before, but it's more that it should never be a shock to the employee, because you should be meeting with them, or if you aren't at the moment following this, you may take our advice and then have a look at doing a 30, 60, 90-day plan, again, which Jen will be talking about in a second, in order to make sure that the employee is not shocked. And if they're shocked, you've still provided them that evidence along the way to say, maybe not up to standard, maybe you need some more training here. And it can be done in a nice way, or it can be done in a very, you've not met target here. And that depends on your approach. Again, the bottom line being your business decision. Does anybody have, I don't know if you want to use the reactions to this, but in terms of Does that make sense? Is that something that you may implement on your side, or still looking to keep as you are at the 6 months? Okay, cool. Thumbs up. I like to see. Okay, Jen, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Anna. I'll try and control the slides and being able to look over here. So if I'm looking between two, it's just because I'm looking at the slides on this side. But I suppose the big question is, what do we mean by a fair process? And I think Dan touched on it a little bit before, in that I think this new legislation and all the talk around it is making businesses really nervous. They're feeling as though once they get to that kind of 6 month point, then they can't dismiss anybody. And it's really not about that. It's all this legislation is around following a fair process, which you will already be doing for employees that have that 2-year service with you. So what we're recommending is that in an ideal world, your probation periods and onboarding will be really slick, include a lot of feedback, include a lot of training, and hopefully kind of prior to that 6 month deadline, you'll have made a really clear decision on whether that probation period should be passed or not, which minimises risk. But what we're recommending is that everybody follows that best practice approach of having a fair process, so that if you are in a situation where perhaps that probation period does just tip over the 6 month mark, and obviously for any of your future processes that you may follow after 6 months or after probation, that you've got that fair process there. And what we kind of lean to is the ACAS guidelines on following fair processes. So that's really about making sure that you've got documented evidence of people having opportunity to improve. So that's making sure that there's regular touch points for feedback, that you've got really clear expectations set, and people really understand what they're doing well and what perhaps they need to do to improve, and what support you're able to give as a business. In terms of kind of the probation process, so when you get towards that final review, you ideally want to be giving that person notice. I'd suggest maybe like a week's notice before that final probation review, making sure that that's booked well within kind of whatever end date you have for that probation. So whether that is 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, or 6 months, making sure that that person has the right to be accompanied at the meeting, and also that they have a right of appeal if the decision is to extend or terminate their contract on the back of the probation period. So this is obviously best practice during those 6 months, and we just encourage you and your managers to really get into the habit of following that fair process, because it's a process that's going to have to be followed for any instances of poor performance or conduct once employees go past that 6 month service anyway. And I do think, I know that, a lot of the time we can be guilty of just kind of feeling quite protected by that 2-year rule, which in some cases it does help kind of make managing a particular case a little bit easier, a little bit more risk-free. But I suppose morally, is that the right thing to be doing? And a few things to kind of watch out for. So in the probation period, you'll want to be mindful of whatever notice period you have detailed in that. Normally, it will be a week's notice from either side during the probation period. If you are making a decision to dismiss somebody for not passing their probation period, just be mindful that 1 week's notice isn't going to tip them over the 6 month service. And if it does, make sure that you've got that clear documented process so that you're protected. Secondly, again, just be mindful when you know that somebody is within their probation period, be mindful of any holidays that they might have that might take them either closer to that 6 month mark or past the 6 month mark if you're having your reviews closer to that date. And again, also if there's sickness absence during the probation period, just be mindful of that again. And obviously if someone has a considerable amount of sickness absence in their probation period, it may be the fair thing to do to extend them post 6 months so that you can measure their performance in work. But obviously correct reasonable adjustments should be made as part of that. And we'd really recommend, if you are in that kind of situation, to get some HR advice, either from us or from your kind of local HR manager as well. And then finally, another key piece of legislation that we've been made aware of this year is that there is now no longer a statutory cap on ordinary unfair dismissal. And that means that claims will be based on actual and projected career losses. So I think at the moment it's capped at 123,000 or 52 weeks pay, but that cap will be removed. So you can only imagine how significant some of these claims will be. And obviously, if you're a smaller business, or any business really, like, that can be so damaging to your reputation, but also your financial situation if you've not followed that fair process. So it's really, really important that you're protecting the business through following these fair processes and making sure that you're really aware of the legalities behind it, and seeking advice as and when you need it. Not to scare you. So that's the legal bit out of the way. We've got a few suggested actions, and then we'll talk through kind of how we kind of recommend our clients to onboard for ease, and to make sure that you're getting what you need out of your new starters, but also so that they feel like they're properly set up for success as well. So what we would recommend that you do is, first things first, is review and update your contracts, especially if you are looking to make a change to that probation period. You'll want that to be in place from the 1st of July. As I said before, it's completely up to you. It's a business decision how long you have that probation period for, but we'd recommend between 3 and 4 months, just giving you that time to allow for extensions and keep you protected as well. So you want your contracts to reflect that. We'd also recommend reviewing your hiring process. So we're talking a lot now about how important the onboarding process is and the probation process, but what we also know is that organisations still so often will hire based on a bit of a vibe check. But what we really encourage doing is having those really clear job descriptions, setting out the expectations, both in terms of performance, but also in terms of those critical things like how often are they expected to be in the office, what are the hours of work, just to make sure that there's no confusion before people join your organisation. So you'll want to review that hiring process, make sure it's really robust, make sure that you've got multiple people, if possible, interviewing, that you've got a scoring matrix in place that is assessing competence, but also things like values and approach to work as well, so that you know that when you are bringing somebody in, you've done that due diligence and that hire's hopefully more likely to succeed. Review and update the onboarding process. So again, make sure that that's amended so that it's in line with any probation period changes that you might make as part of this legislation. Make sure that that onboarding has a clear plan for what your new starters need to know in their first week, first month, first 60 days and first 90 days, and that managers are made aware of when they need to have those documented reviews with the new starters as well. And what we know is that, you know, we can do a lot of this work in the background, but in practice, sometimes it just doesn't happen. So I think a lot of this will be about supporting our managers and supporting ourselves, I suppose, if you're the main manager, to make sure that you've got those reviews diarised, the employee knows when to expect them, so that you're not putting it down to memory. The last thing you want to do is wake up like a couple of days before 6 months and be like, oops, time's really flown. We've not done any reviews and things aren't working out. Finally, train and support managers so they don't get caught out. This is something that we can provide. Don't want this to be a selling probation period, but we'll talk selling webinar, but we'll talk a little bit about how we can support at the end. But we do offer a training module on probations and onboarding for managers as well. The wait and see approach. So I think we can all say that we've either experienced or witnessed this kind of wait and see approach to onboarding a new starter. So whether that's us kind of having shown up on our first day, your managers rushed off their feet, you kind of get left with a laptop and a few things to read. You might get introduced to a couple of people, and then almost expected to kind of figure things out for yourself with very minimal support. And whilst I get that things are busy, you're hoping that you're hiring people into the business that can already, they've already got the skills, they've demonstrated that they've done things in another organisation, but they still need careful onboarding, they still need training, they still need support. And the more that you're able to provide that as like a structured approach, the more likely that person's going to get up to speed quickly, be adding value quickly. So I think when we're going back to sell this to organisations, so when you finish the webinar today and you're going back to tell people in your organisation, I think it's about selling the benefits of having these really robust processes in place, and that they're really going to help you to get the best from these new starters. They're going to feel great, they're going to be enjoying their work, and they're going to be able to work independently a lot quicker if they've got a really clear plan and lots of support from the start. So we'll share with you our 90-day plan, and we'll also share what we've got with you after the session today. And I think a lot of the questions that we get is kind of like, what are the goals that we need to set? Like, what do we need to be covering within the onboarding process to make sure that we are setting people up for success? And what we try and do is link it back to, we call it the ABC of engagement. So I think there's evidence to suggest that the most engaged employees are people that have autonomy in their role, they feel like they belong, and they're also able to contribute well to their business. So we've kind of split the 90-day plan into the ABCs, but actually turns into BCA, which doesn't sound as good as ABCs, but I'll explain it. So basically what we want is from the moment they kind of accept that offer right through to the end of the 30 days, this section should really be about belonging. So you really want at this point to make sure that your new starter feels as though they are part of your team. So that is keeping regular contact with them before they actually join, helping them understand exactly what to expect from their first day, getting them feeling really excited about their new role with you. And within those first 30 days, that's kind of where they're a bit of a sponge, essentially. They want to be getting to know you as their manager or you as their HR person. They want to know their manager. They want to know their colleagues. They want to get to know the people that they're going to be working with every day. They really want to understand, or they need to understand kind of what you stand for as a business, what your values are, what's expected of them, both in terms of their day-to-day responsibilities, but also in terms of the behaviours that you're expecting them to display and the values that they're expected to display. And then they'll start to obviously do some shadowing of perhaps the person that they're taking the role from, or other members of the team. So they're really feeling as though they're meant to be there, they're happy to be there, and that people are welcoming them into the team. So we call the first 30 days the belonging time. Obviously, they'll start to have the systems training and things as part of that. We'd recommend a minimum of a review after 30 days. Ideally, there's one going to be on a weekly basis during their first few weeks, but definitely a minimum of having a review after 30 days that's written and documented. The next 30 days, this is your C, so your contribution, your competence. So this is the skills development, essentially. So this is where they are continuing through training, but they're starting to do some of the work themselves, but they've got access to support. So they're probably going to be starting to respond to emails. They might be starting to assist with key projects, but they're still going to need a lot of, someone with them to mentor them, to ask questions of, to guide them through that and make sure that they really know everything that they need to know, where to find things, who to speak to for what. Is really starting to build up that confidence. And this is where that setting of expectations is going to be really important. They need to know what it is that they need to know by the end of that 60-day period. Again, another formal review here. At this point, this is where you might start to really give lots of feedback, what's going well, but also what could be improved, and understanding kind of if they're not quite getting things, what needs to be in place to help them get that. And in some cases that could look like reasonable adjustments if there's a disability, for instance, and again, you'll want to document that you're making those reasonable adjustments. And then finally, it sounds so simple, doesn't it? Your last 30 days is that autonomy. So this is where you want your new starters to start being independent, essentially. So they're starting to, be able to come into work. They're working through the day. They're not having to ask for much help and support unless something's new, because we know new things do come in all the time. It can take people up to 6 months to fully feel autonomous, but by 90 days, you should start to get that sense of, yes, this person's starting to be able to handle things. They're not coming to me for every single thing. They're still asking questions, but they're the right questions. And I feel like I've got them to a point where they're really able to work autonomously or independently most of the time. And then again, at that 90-day review, whether that's another formal review or whether that's your final probation review, you should really be in a position where you are starting to feel confident that that person is going to be able to be competent and autonomous long term within their role. And then in terms of key things, so we can't manage performance without having those clear expectations and deliverables. So whether you're the manager or whether you're in the HR team, it's really helping that employee to understand like what the key deliverables are, how they can deliver those, so that you can accurately manage performance. I think you don't want to be hearing as a HR partner, or it's just they're just not getting it, it's not helpful, or they're difficult. These kinds of kind of generalized comments that we sometimes get, that's really hard to measure and manage. But I think what we're looking for is actually, we've provided this training and we've supported with this and this, but still deadlines are being missed, or emails aren't get sent, or the number of phone calls that we're expecting them to make isn't where it needs to be. So it's having those expectations so that you can provide clear feedback and actively manage performance. You might want to screenshot this, but we'll send this out afterwards as well. But this is kind of a suggested review that you might want to take your team through as part of their 30 or 60 or 90-day review process. We'll also share with you our final probation review template as well, so you've got that as well. But you can see here, you're making sure at the top that person's feeling as though they belong. So how are they experiencing work with you? Have they done their onboarding activities that you've set out for them? Have they done the compliance training? Have they done the systems training? Have they met key people? Making sure that there's a tick box there to make sure they've done what they need to do. What have they learned? What might they want to look at again? What do they think will be helpful for them? And then also an opportunity for you as a manager to provide feedback on what's going well. Like, recognition is amazing. People respond so well to recognition, but also really starting to practice that feedback muscle early on. So what can be improved, and make sure that that's really kind of specific and clear and understood, and you'll want it documented in here that the employee understood exactly what they need to do to improve. And at that point, you might want to consider whether reasonable adjustments are necessary as well. And then you can keep this recorded on file, make sure it's been accessible to both the employee and the manager, and you've got that. There's your audit trail essentially. So as Dan said, your probation outcomes should never come as a surprise. You want them backed up with evidence and documented reviews. You want to make sure that you've considered reasonable adjustments where necessary, and you want that news to be delivered in advance of the employee reaching 6 months where possible, and have that outcome in writing as well. So again, you've got that audit trail in place. It's a lot to put in place, and I imagine for a lot of organisations this is going to be, maybe you're doing it at the moment, but are you doing it consistently? Or perhaps there's a process there and you say you're going to do it, but you don't always do it. And I think as well, it can be really easy to be a bit slack on this if someone's doing a really great job, but they still need recognition too. They still need feedback too. So this shouldn't just be a single process that's done for people that perhaps are struggling during the probation period. This should be a process for every single new starter that comes through the door. You also don't want a situation where you've got 2 new starters and one of them seemingly is going through these documented reviews and the other one isn't, because that's going to feel a little bit unfair too. So it is going to increase admin, but I think there's also benefits to this too, in that, you know, these hires are important. You've probably spent a lot of money recruiting people. You've spent a lot of time investing in interviews. You want them to be a success. And I think having a really clear process and being able to set really clear expectations is only going to help make sure that that person succeeds as well and does a great job. So I do, whilst it is scary and it's nerve-wracking and you feel a little bit exposed, I do think that there's a lot of benefits to this as well. So that's all from us. Like, I'm conscious I want to give you time to ask questions because I know you might have questions as well. But it'd be really good to know, kind of thinking about your new hires that are coming up now. A couple of you mentioned that you've got people starting in July. What are some actions that you might take following this call today, in order to protect both kind of performance and the business?
I think just while people are thinking or typing, one thing that I would say as well for myself would be about making it as easy as possible for you and your business and your managers, and making it a habit. So when that new starter starts, do you have an automated process in order to book in those one-to-ones, or is that a management expectation? Can you do it for your HR system? There's a lot of there's a lot that you can do in order to create the habits now. And I know it's only a couple of weeks away till July, but creating those habits and making it as simple as possible. You kiss the process because you keep it simple, stupid, you know, and that can go a really long way.
Sarah, that's a really good question.
Yes.
I've seen Sarah's question in the chat. How do the new regulations affect hires who start pre-July? So the same regulations will apply essentially. It's likely that those people will have passed their probation, but ultimately once they hit January, if they're between 6 months and 2 years service, you're going to have to still be following that fair process. It won't be a process, but it would be a performance improvement process or a disciplinary process if things aren't working out too well there. So it's worth being mindful for anybody that's under 2 years.
Yeah, because some probation periods, you don't know, you could have someone on a 9-month probation period that started last month that might still fall under that. They've reached, but they're still in the probation. But in January, they've not fully completed that 9-month process. So yeah, it would apply in that respect. Good question, Sandra. I know you put your hand up. Is it you want to come off to share, or is there? Do you want to type the question in the comments and we'll go on to the next one?
Me?
Oh,
Did
hi.
I hold my hands up?
Yes.
Did you say Andrea?
No, Sandra.
I didn't, but oh, sorry. Sorry. I didn't know that I did it. That's why I was a bit, but I can talk if, but I'll shut up.
Well, that's because you didn't do it. That's why. But if you want something to say, now's your opportunity. Go on.
It's okay, I'll let Sarah, because I am new myself and I'm in an organization that right now doesn't have any processes. So basically my reflection is I need to put in processes.
Yeah.
So mine is different.
Okay, fab.
Fun.
No worries. So Rob saying reviewing our probation review form more in line with the one that you shared. So that's more user friendly and equal for employee employer. Yeah, no, that's perfect. Obviously, templates exist for a reason. And then if you want to bring your company to them, then by all means do so, as long as it's still following that regulations, you're still following that pattern, you're still having those things documented where needed. So that's great.
Louise, yeah, I agree. I think for HR teams, I think this is 1,000,000% the more challenging area. I think it's helping managers with that, and I think it will involve quite a lot of, it's a big change really, isn't it? And I think it will involve, you know, in some cases really kind of supporting our managers through that, and making sure that they feel confident giving feedback as well.
Yeah.
Because it's not easy, is it? It's never a nice thing to have to do, is to tell people that they're not performing as hoped, and those conversations can be really tricky. So yeah, it's helping managers understand the importance of doing that early, so it doesn't become even more difficult later.
Yeah. And then David, your comment there / Nicola, regular communication with staff and consistency across the board. Yeah, exactly. Keeping it as fair and consistent as possible, just so one person feels like they're being treated differently to another. That helps obviously create that fair process too. Super. Okay, if there's no more questions or comments, I'll take the next slide if you want, Jem.
Yeah, and feel free, if you've got other questions, like feel free to reach out to us. We're more than happy to come back to you on email if you've got kind of specific scenario questions that would be helpful.
Yeah.
As well, and as we said, we'll share those. We've got like an onboarding guide, so we'll share that, and it's got kind of the template forms as well, which you can adapt to suit your business. So just a final word, we did mention, we talk about how we can support as well. So there's a few different ways which we can support you and your teams. So it's so lovely to see there's quite a few of our retained clients already on the call, which is lovely. And obviously we'll support all of you to make sure that you're set up to be protected. So I know we've already spent time kind of reviewing your policies and contracts and things. So and you've got us on hand to support. And if anybody else is interested in that, we're happy to chat that through with you. We also do an audit. So this is kind of a one-off project where we can come in and look at your current documents and processes just to make sure that you're protected, or we can provide you with brand new documents if you don't have anything in place already. Another project is we can support with those 30, 60 and 90-day frameworks through kind of coaching with your managers, and then most importantly, the kind of manager training modules that we run. We're currently looking at these just being for specific organisations where we can come and deliver kind of really bespoke training. But if we think that there's an appetite to run something that's a bit more public, where we might be able to get managers from different organisations, then we can consider looking at that as well. But at the moment, it is very much kind of bespoke training, just to make sure that we're leading that training and it aligns with your actual probation process, not just kind of the best practice probation process, essentially. So yeah, if you're interested in any of those, or want some more information, or just want a chat, then you can we can book a call, or you can send us an email and we can chat. And we always offer kind of a free, no obligation conversation as well, before you have to decide